Welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Kleist. Today is June 5th, 2023, and we're joined by Lee Wishing of Grove City College in Grove City, Pennsylvania, as well as my friend Jean Lichty from North Carolina, same state I'm from, and of course our producer Julie's listening in. So thank you for joining us. So Lee, we call our podcast Markers and Milestones because Amanda and I very much believe in college education, higher education, lifelong learning, continuing education. But we're trying to help parents to know two things. One, there's a lot of other ways to receive an education besides college. And two, if you go to college, make sure you pick a good one. And so we, of course, think Grove City's top notch and has been able to preserve a lot of values that conservative Christian families have. And so we welcome you to the show. We want to talk to you about some of your secret sauce and some of the philosophies that Grove City has that inspire so many students. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Lee, and it's sure a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. We respect so greatly at Grove City College what you and all your colleagues are doing at Classical Conversations.
Yeah, so I know because I've been there so many times, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few Classical Conversation students at Grove City. Do you happen to know the numbers or percents or anything?
Right before I came on, I thought, oh, why didn't I try to get that count? But many students, and students don't always put down if they graduated out of Classical Conversations. Sometimes your students will come through as homeschool, and then we'll later learn that it's Classical Conversations. We do have a special field in our data system for Classical Conversations, but it's not always accurate because of that phenomenon. But we have many students. It seems like there's more and more coming.
So one of the things that I find really interesting about Grove City is that it started a long time ago, and I want you to tell us if you know any about the history of how it began. I know I didn't let you know, that's what I was going to ask you. And then something happened in the mid last century where it seemed like Grove City was struggling like so many colleges, and you were able to turn that around. And now it really is a wonderful Christian college, that's classical. And Amanda and I talked to so many different leaders of colleges, and they're all dealing with so many different issues. We kind of want to know if you can let parents know your secret sauce and what it is that they should be looking for before they send their kids off to college.
Yeah, that's secret sauce. Interesting. I would say that Grove City has really been blessed, and even during those years of maybe some wandering in the 60s, where we didn't wander as far as a lot of schools did, but really been blessed by leadership that's committed to Christian education, Christian scholarship. Grove City, founded in 1876, really was kind of a prep school, chartered in 1884 as a college, and really, if you would looking for a model that Grove City followed, it would have been the old Princeton model under a fellow by the name of James McCosh from about 1860s to the 1880s. There was a lot of crossover between Grove City and old Princeton back then. So Grove City today is a lot like what James McCosh, and even prior to him, the other Scottish leader that was so prominent there, Witherspoon. Grove City, is very similar to that old Princeton model. In fact, our second president was the leading philosopher at Princeton, a guy by the name of Alexander Orman. So it's really kind of just a commitment among leaders to Christian scholarship. Really, Lee, that's what it's been. We've been really blessed in that regard. You mentioned in the mid last century, Grove City did start to drift a little bit left. The president of the college back there, or the chairman of the board of the college, J. Howard Pugh, decided that was enough of that and retired the president early and brought in another fellow by the name of Charles Mackenzie, who's had a vision to recenter Grove City and Christ and build a core curriculum of building a Christian worldview curriculum. We still have that at the core. It's a little bit different now, but I would say a great leader that came out of that for the college under really what was a 50-year plus program now is our current president, Paul McNulty. So I think with the vision that J. Howard Pugh had and Charles Mackenzie had, recentering Grove City, building Christian worldview, and creating leaders, we've now got a wonderful president who is a product of that vision. And Paul McNulty, who I think probably most of you know Paul, and at one point was Deputy Attorney General under George Bush. George W. Bush, that is, and was a leading, played a leading role in the nation's response to the bringing down of the Twin Towers and prosecuting terrorists and so forth.
Yeah, that's quite the background that he has. He's also very kind. I was on campus with Gene last year or the year before, and it was just amazing. Wherever he went, those young people were like, hi, Professor, hi, Dr. McNulty, and he just knew every face and name. It was really quite astonishing. Because there's how many students on your campus?
We've got about 2,200 on campus.
I think he knows every one of them.
It's amazing how well he does know them. And if he walks into the auditorium or into the gymnasium, the students will erupt in applause. They just love him.
That's wonderful.
And his wife too. Both Paul and Brenda host Bible studies for young men and women in their home. Brenda's got a big garden out back and welcomes students in to help her garden. They're just marvelous folks.
So you mentioned something our listeners may not know, the Princeton model. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that was the Princeton model was, again, a guy by the name of James McCosh, who was trying to really be, first of all, it was Presbyterian. That was largely Presbyterian model, kind of Reformed Protestant worldview, seeing God as creator of the world, the source of, Christ, the source of all knowledge. A lot like what you would think today, Lee, and at Classical Conversations, and centered on those core ideas, modeling around students learning the classical model and studying from a classical perspective, but distinctly Christian.
And so I realized I didn't
in
let
terms
you
of
into
Christian community, fostering Christian community on campus as well.
That's good. So I realized I didn't let you tell our listeners, who are you? What do you do at Grove City?
Oh, what do I do? I'm my title is Vice President for Student Recruitment. Fancy term for I run admissions.
So Amanda, did you have some questions for him before I ask the rest of mine?
Well, yes, it sounds like you love the history, even though you're recruiting students, or maybe because you're recruiting students to join the history. But for those of us who are not near Pennsylvania and you're not famous to, give me 3 lines or 4 lines. Who is Grove City?
Yeah, well, Grove City is a school where that's sought out by students who want a rigorous Christian education that is also free from government control. Grove City is often mentioned in the same breath as Hillsdale College. Grove City does not take federal aid in order to preserve its Christian mission. It was actually Grove City had probably the most consequential higher ed Supreme Court case in the last century. Hillsdale followed suit after Grove City's case and dropped federal funding. We both had cases going through the federal government at the same time, and they dropped the Hillsdale case and kept the Grove City case going at the time because we were the only school in the country that did not accept any federal funding at all. In other words, that we would say if you have a Pell Grant, send that Pell Grant to Amanda, don't send it to Grove City on behalf of Amanda. And so we were the perfect test case if federal aid to students could be considered federal aid to the institution, and thereby, if they could define it as aid to the institution, then they could regulate the whole institution. Sorry, that was more than, probably three things, but quality education, Christian environment, affordable costs, but strictly, very independent, because we don't want to, ultimately, we don't want to risk the most important thing about a college, and that's freedom of conscience, especially for Christian kids to follow their consciences.
Good. So do you believe that Grove City went ahead and had that case because of their Christian convictions combined somehow with the Austrian economics you teach, or was it a single person who just felt that kind of conviction? Like, what made it so that they had the strength to do that? Because most colleges won't.
Well, that's a really good question, Lee. And I've spent some time actually in archives and looking at trustee minutes, and the trustees saw this coming for a number of years, and they were kind of girding their loins, so to speak, for battle. You could see it in the minutes, and they knew it was coming. And I think they really saw, a couple of big things. One, the ability of the risk, really, the kinds of risks, the kinds of things we see going on in higher ed today is the kinds of things that they were writing about. The trustees saw in the mid to late 70s and into the 80s that they could threaten institutions with a worldview that would not be consistent with the Christian worldview. And then secondarily, just the regulatory burden. The Code of Federal Regulations that applies to financial aid is thousands of pages. You could never know if you're in compliance really at any time with the federal government. And then lastly, just the overwhelming costs of the bureaucracy just to fill out all the paperwork and forms and report the statistics to the federal government. It's really burdensome and expensive to have to do that.
Mm-hmm. So what do you suggest to admissions officers around the United States at Christian schools? What do you suggest that they do to assure students that they're going to get the education they think they're going to get? I guess I'm asking because you're in charge of admissions, and a lot of parents just assume the name of a school means something. So what are the better questions they could ask while they're applying to find out what that school really is about?
Yeah, Lee, that's a really good question. One little thing, an important thing is in governance, and a lot of people don't think about this, is the issue of tenure. Grove City does not have tenure. I'm on a 1-year contract. The president's on a 1-year contract. All our faculty are on 1-year contracts. It's a problem if you have tenure and faculty start to go a direction that you don't want them to go, and difficult to steer the ship. Grove City's not a perfect place. We've got 150, 160 full-time faculty, and every once in a while there's an issue that comes up like any other institution, and then the role of people, management, President McNulty gets involved very quietly usually, and makes sure that people are in alignment. And we've got this nice tool, the 1-year contract, and you could just put it across the desk and say, do you want to come back next year? Very quietly. So another thing that I think you would want to look at is a core curriculum. What is in the core curriculum? What are students required to learn? I always tell families to read faculty bios. Who's going to be, just like classical conversations, and your community groups, who's going to be teaching your children, who's going to, at the college level, who's going to be teaching the kids. Today, a huge problem in the woke world is the idea of tenure, and then there's a syllabus, and faculty can say, I'm not going to teach that. I'm going to teach whatever I want to teach. I think another thing you want to find out is, will you have a faculty member teaching your child, or will you have a teaching assistant, teaching your child? Grove City, over 90% of our professors are terminal degrees in the classroom, teaching students. And are your faculty Christian? Grove City hires Christian faculty. And I think that that's, a really good thing for parents. I think sometimes parents may think that they have to sacrifice quality if you're a Christian, but at Grove City, we believe, as Christ is the source of all truth, there's no room for sloppy thinking. So Christian scholarship is a rigorous pursuit of the truth, and therefore we've got a really high academic bar. And so students have to work hard. And then on the back end, the employment prospects for our students are phenomenal. We've got the number 4 rated career services office in the country, and it's built around the countercultural idea that students are made in the image of God with certain talents, interests, and abilities, with a calling to serve others, and take dominion. Education, a dominion education, to bring forth the full potential of the earth and to serve others. That's the countercultural idea of our career services office, countercultural idea of Grove City College, and our mission statement. That's what we're all about, is preparing students for their calling. And our career services office does that in a very tangible manner over a 4-year program, beginning with the idea of, like, who are you? How did God create you? How does that align with your major and interests? And then actually test these things out over 4 years before you graduate. And consequently, employers, you look at our employer list, it's like a who's who of corporate America that come here because they've got students who are honest and who work hard, and they know that Grove City College is not a place where there's grade inflation. You earn your grades at Grove City, and it's a beast academically. I mean, you got to work hard to get out of Grove City College, and employers like that.
So Amanda, before you ask your question, could you clarify something for me that you said, Lee? Your very first point was that a tenure, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so I'm a parent and it's my first kid going off to school. How do I ask that question in a way that I get the right answer? Do I ask the admissions office, tell me about professor tenure? Or do I say, how do you hire them? What's my question for them?
Yeah, well, you could just ask, probably most colleges are going to have tenure, so it's probably almost a given, but just say, what kind of contracts do your faculty have? How long is it until they earn tenure? What percentage of your faculty are on tenure? Again, another big thing is, like, what percentage of your faculty are full-time and in the classroom?
So Lee, I've been in university world forever, like since I was 18. And what I'm hearing is you're a teaching school, even though you're prioritizing scholarship. That's the way some of us in the academic world would hear this, because I'm hearing prioritize classroom. I'm hearing don't use adjuncts. I'm hearing tenure is not something to look for. And one of the arguments often given for tenure is it frees up the research area of the academic's life. So with those things said, what do you think
About research?
about research, or about being more of a teaching school than a research school?
Yeah, I think Grove City does a really good job of balancing that. Thanks for asking about research. There are a lot of research projects going on at Grove City. Not funded by the federal government, private funding, privately funded research projects, but lots and lots of scientific research projects going on at Grove City. That's a big priority for it, and we do have privately.
So you're funded by industry.
Excuse me?
You're funded for the science project by industry.
Right, and
Mhm.
foundations and donors. Yeah. Here's another thing, that's really important. So I will always say to students, three things. Who are you? Who are your faculty? And who are your friends? When you go to college. I think it's really important today that in this world where cell phones make so much of, and mine's cracked. There's my Buffalo Bills logo on the back. Go Bills. But anyway, where cell phones help to create identity, and students have, as you know, a big challenge today understanding just who they are. And what we try to tell students is at Grove City, you're made in the image of God. Clear all of this out. That's who you are. Let's just simplify your life and who you are. You're made in the image of God. And then will you have faculty who are going to affirm that and respect your conscience? So who are you? Who are your faculty? And then really importantly, and I think this is something that a lot of people overlook, who are your friends? Who are your friends going to be? The single most important factor in forming a student's values while in college and helping to determine academic success is their friends. It's their peer group. And if you're out in California, you probably know that UCLA has a research center on these kinds of things. And the peer effect in higher ed is a well-researched thing. So really consider who you're going to surround yourself with, because that's so important.
It is. And one of the
Sure.
questions we've been asking a lot of people is, how does your Christ-centered worldview institution encourage your students to get involved in their local church?
Yeah, well, that's a really big priority at Grove City. So big that we don't do chapel on Sunday, that we want people to have to join a local church. Our resident assistants, RAs, many of them will do like the first 5 or 6 weeks, take groups of students from church to church to church to have them try them out. We have a church fair on campus in our intramural room. So we ask all the local churches to come in, and they put up booths almost like a trade fair. So students can, find out who the pastors are and so forth of all the local churches. And probably at like a lot of Christian colleges, we've got lots of vans coming to campus on Sunday and picking students up and, taking them out to local churches. We've got many churches like mine that are in walking distance of the college. So yeah, we really do greatly encourage, encourage that.
I have to say, I have never heard of a college having a church fair. Is that common at small Christian colleges? Or do you think you're unique?
I don't know. I spent 29 years working at Grove City College, and I haven't been on other campuses, so I don't know.
Do you know, Amanda, what the?
Often, at least at Biola, they'll invite churches to have information available during the first week if they want to. Not necessarily a fair thing, but if you want to say who you are and where you are, they give it to the students. And there's vans and buses and that kind of thing. But yeah.
Oh, the same thing. When we first started describing it, Lee, I was thinking, well, I would want to go and just break out in praise and start singing with all the churches in one place there. It just seems like it'd be a great time of worship. Is that how it's represented, or is it more, does it feel more like a trade fair?
No, it's like a trade fair. Yeah.
Is it?
It's like a corporate trade fair. We might have other organizations involved too, but I'm trying to think. There's a number of these kinds of things, but I think it's just a church fair. But if not, it's like an organization fair. But we welcome all the local churches that come in. We also have a church camp fair. We have lots of church camps come to Grove City to recruit. That probably happens at other Christian colleges as well.
And recruiting leaders for the camps, I'm guessing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And kitchen staff, if it matches anything like the camps in our area.
That's a good idea. It's good internship, so you actually get that Grove City degree, and the jobs that I know that people are going to want your students. So could you tell our audience about the 2015 kind of college cliff? And I think Grove City's not worried about it, but kind of describe what's going on and the kinds of numbers you guys are seeing.
Oh yeah, the demographic cliff. So in 2008, there was a big stock market crash, right? And so one of the things that happened demographically and sociologically, family formation kind of started to shrink. Moms and dads were having fewer children, and so 18 years later, what's coming through the system is fewer students, right? And there had been a downtick in family formation. The number of children births per family has been on a steady decline. But what's going to happen in like 2025, 2026, especially in this region, boom, it's going to fall off 15 to 20% in the Northeast. In other words, 15 to 20% fewer students graduating from high school. So yeah, it does concern me. We are in the Northeast. Fortunately, Grove City has been holding its own. Our total population this year will actually be up 5%. But yeah, and it's a serious issue, and you're going to see lots of colleges closing, I think.
Well, we already are, and you see, especially
Yeah.
in New England, but everywhere else too. I went online yesterday and was just looking at colleges for sale and schools for sale, and there's more and more of them. So
Yeah.
it's something that I think parents think that everything's the status quo from when they went to school, and they don't recognize that schools are going to be having to adapt in order to keep students. So fortunately for you guys, you have you're increasing. I think that you're going to survive it really well. But do you see a percentage or higher percentage of Christian colleges going out of business because the state will keep funding their own? Or like, what do you foresee happening to our options as Christians?
Well, I'm hoping that the Christian colleges survive this. I hope my competitors survive it and thrive. I think if we can be distinctly Christian and offer something different from the world and not try to be all things to the world, we'll stand out for the Christian population that wants a Christian college. I think those that are stick to their mission and are unapologetic, I'm hoping that those schools will make it. I don't know. I'm not going to predict, what happens. I really do. I really hope that all the solid, the Christian colleges that are solidly committed to the Christian mission are going to make it, because we need the Christian colleges to make it. But it's going to be a battle. It's going to be tough.
Grove City's been such a good model. I mean, like, I know a lot of college presidents and missions officers now because of Classical Conversations, and many of them are looking at what you've done and are starting to reject funding. So over the last couple decades, there's actually a list going around of almost 30 colleges that no longer take federal money, and I suspect that's going to double, because between now and the cliff, you've got not just the numbers going down, but people have really opened their eyes to what is the difference between a classical Christian education and just an education for a degree. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah. And I want to encourage, if there's any donors out there watching, it's a tough thing to go it alone. Grove City College, our competitors, probably, the value of just the Pell Grant stream alone, if you were to take that money and multiply it by 20. So let's say a college gets $4 million a year in Pell Grant money. And that's money for to help students, right? To pay school. So if they get $4 million and a stream, multiply that times 20, and that's what it would take to generate that $4 million. In other words, an endowment to generate a bank account, in other words, an endowment in colleges, the fancy term for your big savings account or your investment account is the endowment. So you need $80 million in endowment money to generate, or 5%, 5% of $80 million is $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
So for a college to walk away from $4 million in annual funding, they need to raise $80 million and stick it in the bank or the stock market. And this is why it's so difficult to walk away from the federal money. And then if you think about what happened during COVID, lots of schools, lots of Christian schools got lots of federal money to keep the door open.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't take a dime of it.
No.
But if you go that route, it takes a lot of money to make it. Grove City just announced a $185 million campaign. 50 million of that will be for scholarship funds. Frankly, I think we need more than that. But 135 more million to keep up with the first class science programs we have, Amanda, putting lots of money into the science program. But anyway, yeah, it's expensive to walk away from the federal funding. You need to raise millions and millions of dollars to walk away from it.
Yep. Well, if you visit our show called Unfragmented, we talk about that all the time. So I appreciate you echoing what we've been discussing. In my podcast called Unfragmented, we talk about how the world's lost its cohesion. There's no center. Be aware of those kind of phrases. And so we're always on the markers and milestones looking for people who actually know what that means and how to bring cohesion back to a young person as well as a family's life. So thanks for what you guys do. Amanda, we just have a couple of minutes left. Do you have another question, or Jean or Julie? They both come black on us.
Well, I do have a question. And Lee, Pennsylvania has winter. And a bunch of us out here have not much winter.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, how do you survive the winter if you're not from there?
Well, I'm not a good one to ask about that.
I know you're from Buffalo, New York, which is where my daddy's from. So I know all those
When
stories.
people ask me about that, I say, well, it's pretty mild here. Compared to
I
what I'm
get it.
used to. But well, you wanna have a good coat and some boots and so forth. And we do get California kids who come, and actually kids from Hawaii who love to come, and the first time they see snow or ice and like, what's this? Ice, it's slippery. So you get to experience different seasons here. That is pretty.
It's a beautiful campus. It's really an inspiring place. The buildings are beautiful, the folks that attend there, and of course the environment that it's in. So before we leave, can you tell us a couple of more logistical kind of questions? One, what's your deadlines for admission for this coming fall? I'm sure they're past this fall, or are they?
Well, students can keep applying. We still have some room. So I accepted a couple more today. But so yeah, they can, if they're interested, they can apply in the summer for next year, for the fall of 2024, we've got really three big deadlines. For students who know that Grove City is their first choice and they really want to come, we've got what's called Early Decision 1 and Early Decision 2. That's November 1 and December 1st, November 1st and December 1st. And then we have, if you're not so sure, regular decision is January 20th. So, and then for students who need a little bit more time, we have what we call regular decision 2, and that's March 20th. So November 1, December 1, January 20th, and March 20th. Hey, can I give you one little tip about parents on financing higher ed?
Of course.
Education? Sticker prices are really, really high, right? I mean, most people are seeing 45,000 is a low price to 65,000, 70, 75,000. That sticker price for the most part is just a marketing tactic. So you raise the price really, really high to kind of create an impression of value. Grove City, very different. We just charge the break-even price. So this year it's $32,660. That includes everything, and then from there we offer financial aid from that point that lowers it further. But the giant price that you see is really it's a marketing tactic. Most colleges cost somewhere around like Grove City. Grove City might be a little bit more higher break-even price because of the sciences programs that we have. We've got a full range of sciences programs, but so there's this really high price, and then everybody gets a scholarship. And the key is, here's something, Lee, that tell your parents to do this. Ask the college, what's your average scholarship? What's the average scholarship amount? Because really what that is a discount, because colleges raise it really high and then they lower it to a break-even point, and it doesn't cost the college anything to do that. It's like handing somebody a coupon.
Sure.
The concern is if you don't get the average or better, you're paying for somebody else's scholarship. That makes sense?
Yeah,
So let's say a college's sticker price is $60,000 and it costs $30,000 to run that college. Well, they're hoping that their average discount is going to average, is going to average out at 30. But some kids are going to lower it to 20. Right? They're going to say, gosh, you're a 1500 SAT or a 100 CLT, and we really, really want you. And so we're going to only charge you 20. Well, so that kid gets an extra 10. Where did that money come from? Well, it came from the kid that got a scholarship. She thinks she got a $20,000 scholarship. Like, holy cow, mom, I got a $20,000 scholarship. No, you didn't. The average was 30. You just overpaid 10, and they shoved that other money under the table to somebody who may turn out to be your roommate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a real important question is, what's the average scholarship? And if you don't get that, there's a really good chance you're paying for somebody else to go to college. And the real tragedy with that is often what students do is they borrow the difference, and they'll spend the next 10 years paying off somebody's scholarship they didn't even realize they were funding.
So can you clarify, when you said it was 36 some thousand numbers, is that tuition, room and board, computers, supplies? Like what's everything? Tell us.
Yeah, tuition, room and board, food, your computer. We hand you can't see my computer, I'm on it, but everybody gets an HP EliteBook computer and all the software that you need, all the computer repair that you need. Total inclusive package.
And that's for 1 year.
That's for 1 year.
Okay.
So Lee, I know that we're headed towards wrapping up, but I know that some colleges have summer programs that are scholarship based to attract high school juniors and seniors that they'd like to attend. Does Grove City have any of those?
No, we don't.
You don't need to.
You don't need to, okay?
All right, well, so tell us your website.
GCC for Grove City College .edu, gcc.edu. Oh, and we do have a full array of dual enrollment programs, but I always tell the class, stick with your classical program. I'm a real big believer in the trivium and the quadrivium, and so I think that those are great programs, and it's to your not cut short your classical education in high school in favor of dual enrollment. If you can stick with it, it's a great model. My kids, them all go through Grove City Christian Academy, and where I was a president of the board for a number of years, but I really believe in the classical model. And by the way, stations, kids, anybody, mom and dad, students listening, you're doing the right thing. You're going to be prepared really, really well for rigorous places like Grove City. Your students stand out right away. Our faculty can tell who the classically educated students are within a day or two.
What's the difference? What is it they're looking at?
They're well read. They think well. They have already been exposed to lots of the authors that our faculty are using in our core curriculum. They stand out. They're not like me when I went to college, who was like drinking from a fire hose and hoping that I could get a gentleman's B memorized long enough to get a gentleman's B and move on. You guys are doing a great work.
Well, we're just so glad we have places like you to send them to whenever we're launching them, and we just appreciate the time you gave us. So thank you for being with us, Lee and Jean. We'll see you, and Julie another time.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
Great to be with you. Bye-bye.
Bye.